Our country has been looted, pillaged, raped, plundered. That's not a quote from a medieval history book. That was US President Donald Trump in the White House Rose Gardens in 2025, unveiling what would become one of the most controversial moves of his second term. A sweeping wave of reciprocal tariffs slapped on nearly every major US trading partner. But here's the twist: some countries were mysteriously spared. China slapped with 34% tariff, India 26%, Japan 24%. Even Israel, Washington's closest ally, got hit with a 17% tariff. But Iran, America's sworn enemy and one of the most sanctioned countries in the world, escaped with just a baseline 10%. Hello and welcome. You're watching Statecraft with me, Geeta Mohan. Today we are looking into the strangely selective world of Trump's tariffs, starting with Trump's new formula. And we use the word formula loosely here. According to the Trump administration, tariffs were calculated by dividing America's trade deficit with each country by that country's total exports to the US. No consideration of trade volume, global alliances, or strategic partnerships, just a simple fraction. And that's where Iran comes in. Iran barely trades with the United States of America. Why? Because of decades of sanctions. In 2023, the US imported just $2.2 million in goods from Iran that were mostly artwork like paintings and sculptures. You heard that right. Iran's trade with the US is basically decorative. In return, the US sent about $59 million worth of medical supplies, vaccines, and pharmaceuticals to Iran. That gives Washington a trade surplus, and under Trump's math, that meant no high tariff. So while allies like Japan and South Korea got slammed, Iran ended up with just a default 10%, the minimum any country can get. Did you know one of the most commonly exported Iranian items to the US is miniature paintings, often centuries old, highly valued by collectors? So Iran's cultural heritage got through US customs faster than Canadian maple syrup. Now let's be clear, Iran is still under heavy US sanctions. Financial services, oil exports, shipping, all restricted. But those very sanctions which cut off Iran from the global economy, ironically ended up protecting it from Trump's tariffs. Trump's team didn't bother with tariffs on countries where sanctions already made trade virtually impossible, and Iran wasn't the only one. Let's take a look at the full list of countries spared from Trump's tariff storm. Belarus, Cuba, North Korea, Russia, Canada, Mexico, Vatican City, Burkina Faso, Palau, Seychelles, Somalia. Now, we can understand why the Vatican might not be a major steel exporter, but Russia, North Korea, Cuba? That's not just odd, that's policy with a purpose. Trump administration claimed that Russia was spared because sanctions preclude any meaningful trade. But that's only partly true. In 2024, US-Russia trade was worth $3.5 billion, hardly zero. The US exported $526 million worth of goods to Russia, mostly vaccines and medical supplies. In return, America imported radioactive chemicals and fertilizers. Sounds meaningful to us? So why was Russia really spared? Some reports claim Trump didn't want to jeopardize ongoing negotiations with Vladimir Putin over a possible ceasefire in Ukraine. While countries like Ukraine, yes, war-torn Ukraine, got hit with a 10% tariff, Russia was left alone. Talk about punishing your friends and placating your rivals. Now, you might have noticed Canada and Mexico on the exempt list too. That's not out of kindness. Both countries were already hit earlier in the year with a 25% tariff on almost everything, especially Canadian energy and Mexican auto parts. Only products under the USMCA, the US-Mexico-Canada Agreement, were spared. So technically, Canada and Mexico weren't let off the hook. They were just hit first. Canadian Prime Minister Mark Carney has called Trump's moves destructive.
The ambition of these measures is enormous, the effects on the global economy will be monumental. We received confirmation that the latest reciprocal tariffs will not be imposed on Canada. At the same time, President Trump confirmed that the tariffs announced last week against our auto industry will come in, and indeed have come into effect today. So while it's progress that further tariffs were not imposed on Canada yesterday, the President's actions will reverberate here in Canada and across the world. And we are already seeing the consequences. Just last evening, workers from Unifor Local 444, with whom I met last week, learned that their auto assembly plant in Windsor will be shutting down for at least the next 2 weeks. That's 3,600 workers who are now out of work, not by their choice. Workers who now worry how they're going to put food on the table and pay their bills. I and my government stand in solidarity with those workers in Windsor and all those workers hurt by President Trump's tariffs. And that's why we committed from the very start that all, and I repeat, all of our tariff proceeds will go to protect workers affected by the tariffs. Yesterday's actions by the U.S. administration, while not specifically targeting Canada, will rupture the global economy and adversely affect global economic growth. The global economy is fundamentally different today than it was yesterday. The system of global trade anchored on the United States that Canada has relied on since the end of the Second World War, a system that, while not perfect, has helped to deliver prosperity for our country for decades, is over. Our old relationship of steadily deepening integration with the United States is over. The 80-year period when the United States embraced the mantle of global economic leadership, when it forged alliances rooted in trust and mutual respect, and championed the free and open exchange of goods and services, is over. Well, this is a tragedy. It is also the new reality. We must respond with both purpose and force.
Mexico's President Claudia Sheinbaum is even considering retaliatory tariffs.
En la medida de lo posible, pues queremos evitar poner aranceles recíprocos. Les voy a decir por qué. Autos tiene su característica, pero particularmente acero y aluminio. El aumentar el 25%, que digamos no lo descartamos, pero preferimos seguir el diálogo antes de alguna otra medida, representaría incrementos en el precio en México. Entonces, por supuesto que queremos proteger a la industria mexicana, a las empresas mexicanas, porque sería muy fácil, pues le ponemos aranceles al acero y al aluminio. Pues sí, nada más que eso va a aumentar los precios aquí. Entonces, pues todo eso, y estamos en comunicación permanente con las y los empresarios mexicanos. Entonces, por eso también, más allá de lo que vaya a hacer otro país, otra región del mundo, que es su responsabilidad y la respetamos, pues nosotros estamos buscando evitarlo y poder llegar a un acuerdo previo.
Meanwhile, allies like the European Union, Japan, and India are all preparing for economic backlash and possibly even trade wars. Let's talk about North Korea. Yes, the same North Korea that once called Trump a dotard and tested missiles during his presidency. In 2024, the US still managed to export $1.5 million worth of goods to Pyongyang, including pharmaceuticals, chemicals, and even some food items. That's despite one of the harshest sanction regimes in modern history. Again, the low volume of trade means no massive tariff and no political pressure from Trump. The result? Kim Jong-un's regime essentially got a pass. Now here's where it gets especially awkward. Just before Trump's tariff list was announced, Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu removed all tariffs on US imports, a goodwill gesture. How did Trump respond? By imposing a 17% tariff on Israeli goods, 7% more than Iran. Let that sink in. Israel, America's forever ally, got penalized. Iran, the country that chants death to America in its parliaments, skated by with a 10%. Geopolitics, out of the window. This was spreadsheet governance. Let's recap. China, 34%, now being threatened with an additional 50% tariff. India, 26%. Japan, 24%. South Korea, 26%. EU, 20%. Vietnam, a whopping 46%. All major trading partners, except China and Vietnam, all are democratic countries, all slapped with tariffs. Meanwhile, Russia, Iran, North Korea, Cuba, all sanctioned and got away with minimal or no tariffs. It's not just about trade policy anymore. It's about what kind of message the US is sending to the world. Are we seeing a pivot away from traditional allies? Is Trump's second term trying to redraw the global friendship map? Or is it just about numbers, cold, confusing, and context blind? At the heart of it all, Trump's tariff strategy isn't just about dollars and cents. It's about who America punishes and who it protects. Iran may be isolated, sanctioned, and combative, but in Trump's economic chessboard, that isolation ironically worked in Iran's favor. As global trade reshuffles and as America's alliances get tested, one thing is certainly clear. In the world of tariffs, less trade might actually be more protection. Thank you for watching Statecraft.